Hello everyone, my name is Steve Studelsky. I'm the Platform Manager for the Galvanic Applied Sciences AccuSeries Analyzer. Today I'll be presenting an introduction to AccuSeries. We'll cover the measurement theory, analyzer design, and installation and maintenance requirements. Here we can see a picture of our AccuSeries, and these are process liquid analyzers. They do wet chemistry analysis from titration, ISE, to colorimetry. This is a third generation platform. We've been installing and selling these for over 30 years. This is our third generation again. So prior to this was the Sentinel, and prior to Sentinel was called the FPA, the Titronics FPA and Titronics Sentinel. Now we've just gone with calling this the new device is the Galvanic Applied Sciences AccuSeries. So I like to think of this as a robotic chemist, meaning you'll do the same analysis that can be done on a wet chemistry bench, but sits out there in the field, runs all day long, all night long, was never out the night before drinking, not working with a hangover, so he's sitting there happy doing your results. It's designed for process control and the various environmental compliances required for the application. We can offer up to 3 different measurements or compounds per stream. So it's a very fast return on investment with one device. We can do also multi-stream, up to 6 different sample streams. Again, won't have to purchase 6 as long as it's close enough to the different streams. So it's obviously a fast return on investment. We designed these based on the application to have the optimal wetted parts so that it is compatible with your sample stream, so it will, in effect, create minimal maintenance. We use what we call wide bar sample tubing, which is up to a 1/4 inch diameter, so we can handle high solids. And again, we'll create, less clogs, so minimal maintenance. Less maintenance that has to be performed on the analyzer. We offer the analyzer hazardous area certified for Class 1, Div 2, or Zone 2 ATEX applications without a purge required. So this greatly simplifies the installation and also maintenance. You don't have to bring instrument air out to the unit. Here's a couple of key applications by industry that we offer the AccuSeries in. So for chlor-alkali, we do an awful lot of brine purification and chlorine absorption scrubber applications. So we do total hardness of the brine, so obviously the calcium magnesium for protecting the electrolytic cells. And we also offer caustic and carbonate and also hypochlorite measurements or chlorine measurements. In refinery, we do an awful lot of applications in the sour water stripper, so we can measure ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, phenol, cyanides. In the SRU, or tail gas treater unit, amine sweetening, we offer the amine strength in H2S gas loading. In semiconductor, we do an awful lot in the CMP wastewater treatment area of the plant, measuring both copper and hydrogen peroxide value prior to going to municipal sewer. Iron and steel manufacturing, we do applications in pickling baths by measuring hydrochloric acid concentration and iron concentration in the hydrochloric acid. And numerous applications in plant or industrial wastewater. So from measuring alkalinity and coagulation and flocculation, or phosphate and nitrate for nutrient removals, or just simply effluent compliant, meaning they can't have any metals leaving in the water at a certain value, so we measure that, or alkalinity or ammonia, etc. Here we're going to take a look at the lower enclosure where the fluidics are. The reaction cell, this is where we actually add the reagents through these various piston pumps or peristaltic pumps. Does the reaction. In this case, it looks like it's a pH probe, so potentiometric titrator. The sample comes in the bottom through the sample valves, and those are either energized in time when it's ready to take a sample and fills the cell. Reagent fittings are also on the bottom, so your reagent containers will be stored underneath this on a shelf or on the floor. So the way that the analyzer gets a sample is you will plumb into the sample inlet, and then you can plumb the sample return back to a lower pressure portion where the sample actually originates from. And this is always fast flowing. So it's always, when it calls time for analysis, the solenoid energizes, the valve opens, and now the sample inlet stops going out the return, goes into the analyzer, fills and drains and cleans the sample cup, and then holds a volume, a known volume, and the analysis starts. We also offer, for cleanup after analysis, we can do a post-wash option with DI water, either through a pressurized source where we would have another sample valve that we would use and plumb DI water to, or use a peristaltic pump and pump it from a reagent container underneath the analyzer. So we use what's called piston pumps, and these are for very low level. Each revolution will inject 50 microliters or less of reagents. And these are typically used for reagents where we only use very low milliliter quantities, or for a titrant, because titrant, when you're doing a titration, it's very, very critical to know the exact amount of titrant delivered to calculate an endpoint. Peristaltic pumps are much faster, much higher flow rates. We use these for dilutions, buffers, to inject calibration or actually samples into the reaction cup. So these are used where critical finite amounts of liquids is not required. Here we're taking a look at the sample cup. So we offer these in a multitude of arrangements. As you can see on the left-hand side picture, this is one with a fiber optic in it, so that's a colorimetric measurement. The picture on the right sample cup shows one with a potentiometric probe or an ISE probe, so that we offer probe-based or electrode measurement technologies. It's a sealed design, and we really adjust these methods so that we use minimal amount of sample volume, so it's much easier to clean, and it allows for faster analysis, less reagents used. The way that we grab the sample volume is we use what's called an air vent valve, and we allow sample pressure to build up slightly, and then we open this and it will drain out the siphon tube. And at the bottom of the siphon tube, which you can see in both of these pictures, it's the white tube close to the probe, especially on the colorimeter one on the left-hand side, and just to the left-hand side of the metal rod or RTD that's in the probe-based one. So what happens is, as the sample drains out that siphon, it's always an exact amount of samples. So say if it calls for 10 mils capture volume, every time it will be that. We do not rely on a pump or a valve or any other type of device to limit the amount of sample there, because it all is fixed on that siphon tube depth. We have a magnetic stir plate mixer, which mixes all the reagents prior to analysis or during titration. And again, we optimize the materials of what these are made of. This sample cup here that we see, the see-through one, that's an acrylic sample cup. But for harsher environments or harsher samples, we might have to upgrade this to Kynar. We're going to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say colorimetry, when we do a colorimetric method. So what happens is, let's use an example, copper in solution. So that was a semiconductor application. We'll say it's a 0 to 2 ppm range of dissolved copper in wastewater that they want to detect. We will actually add reagents in various buffers that will start a slight reaction, and it will create a color change. Typically the sample obviously will be clear because very low range, and it will turn a color, and we measure that color at a specific wavelength through the fiber optics. We also use a second reference that does not see the color, but it accounts for turbidity in the sample or some air bubbles or lamp aging. So now it's just standard Beer's law at this point. It gives us the wavelength of interest absorption value corrected for lamp aging or particulates in the sample or air bubbles in the sample on the optical path. Here we're taking a look at what we call ion selective electrode measurement. These are either a pH probe or an ISE probe used with various buffers and standard known addition for ISE for low range. So we actually spike the sample with a known amount. So in this case, let's talk chloride. That's a chloride probe. We will actually spike the sample with a known concentration of chloride because these probes are prone to drifting. So anything beyond the spike that we put in it is proportional to how much actual chloride is present. So that's a way that we stabilize this. So we're always looking at a potential millivolt potential change proportional to the concentration beyond the spike that we put in it. Here we see for titrations measurements, we offer pH probe based titrations where, as you can see, an example of this one, it is looks like it's an acid being titrated with caustic and AOH, and the amount of volume of titrant used is proportional to the acid value on that. Others that we offer, we also do colorimetric titration, where we drop by drop use a titrant and we look at the color change endpoint. And again, the amount of titrant used is proportional to the analyte value. We offer argentometric titrations with a silver billet probe. These are typically used for chloride values or H2S values. With the AccuSeries analyzer, we tend to use previously user-defined methods. Some of these are ASTM, EPA, UOP, ISO, or standard methods. Or we can do custom applications where a custom application is done at a certain customer site, and we can, if they will share that lab method, we will set up our analyzer to do the same in the field. Colorimetry, we can do ammonia boron. We can also do this if it's higher levels with ion selective electrode. We offer various titrations for acidity, alkalinity, amine value. Again, going back to colorimetry, as you can see, it's really A to Z what we can offer. And we will, depending on the application, either offer it as a titration, colorimetric, or ion selective. And that's all based on the actual application and possible interferences that may be there, etc. We offer up to 3 parameters in one analyzer. For example, we can do a dual ISE analyzer. So we could offer nitrate, nitrite, or nitrate and ammonia in one analyzer, a titration and pH measurement if required, dual titrations, triple titrations, dual colorimetric analysis, in a dual results from calculations. For example, we could do total chlorine and free chlorine on one analyzer. In the event that a sample analyte is simply too high for us to do with a standard method in the amount of dilution that's required, we can offer what's called a small sample valve. This is just simply a small sample loop in a manifold rotating valve, which is either air actuated or 24 volts motor actuated. We offer this with custom materials, depending on what the application is for material compatibility. One thing that's important when we do small sample valve, because it is a basic ceramic rotor and stator, we do not want any suspended solids present, because over time that will scratch it and damage the seals. But with this device, we can offer up to 100 times or more dilution capability. So if it's a very, very high range analyte, we can dilute it out and still use our methods, and then on top of this still do a DI water or solvent dilution. Sample requirements, very important topic. We want at least 200 mils per minute, at least 5 psi, and a temperature of 0 to 70 degrees. We really want to keep the particulates or suspended solids down to 500 milligrams per liter or less, and up to 1,000 microns. If the sample cannot be met at those requirements, we offer sample conditioning options. So as you see over to the side here, this is a sample conditioning panel where it has a cooler, a sample cooler to reduce temperature, a pressure regulator, and flow control. And on these panels, we again custom materials of construction based on the application requirements. We can make it out of, standard is 316 stainless steel. We can offer these of Hastelloy, titanium, tantalum. As long as it's available on the market, we can custom make a sample conditioning panel for you. Some of the dimensions of the standard analyzer enclosure. So roughly 100 pounds in weight. There's your size, 40 inches tall, 16 inches wide, 9.5 inches deep. It's suitable for environments of minus 20 to 60 degrees C. Utilities required is either 24 volts DC or universal AC power, 90 to 240 volts AC, 50 to 60 hertz. It consumes on average 310 watts. Here's our certificate. So we offer the North American Class 1 Div 2 or Zone 2 and the ATEX or IECX Zone 2 certification. Analyzer is made up of modules that plug into a main motherboard in the upper enclosure. So it can be quickly reconfigured. We can actually quickly convert one of these if required from colorimetric to ISE or potentiometric simply by changing a amplifier board. We have isolated the fluidics from the main processing unit above to keep so there's no corrosion, or if anything leaks, it will not get on any of the electronics because it's its own separate enclosure. We alarm to the DCS if indeed there is a fluidics error. If there is no fluidics running, it will trigger an alarm of low sample flow or no sample flow. This shows the motherboard or backplane board in all of the sensor modules plug into. It allows for 8 analog outputs, has Modbus and Ethernet capabilities. It has various digital inputs and programmable relays. Again, the boards are sealed, an epoxy coated sealant to avoid any humidity or condensation forming that will create corrosion, or if it's in an environment that's corrosive vapors present, we will not attack the boards. So analyzer operation, it's all controlled from a local keypad control that's on the analyzer. And from here, that's where you will perform various setups such as calibration, analog outputs to what you want, or the Modbus settings is all done from a local keypad. We also offer it with a touchscreen HMI panel PC. At the moment, this is for general purpose areas only, not for hazardous area locations. There's a picture of it right there, the touch panel. So that takes place of the keypad. We offer remote access through a remote GUI through Ethernet. And from this, you can do all of your run calibrations, run some diagnostics. You can data archive the information or the results, or you can go in there and modify the configuration of your analyzer. For instance, you would use that to say if it was a 3-stream analyzer and stream 3 is down, you can simply go in remotely and disable stream 3 so it only runs 1 and 2. So it's used for those types of scenarios. Here we see a couple of installation options, how the analyzers are mounted. As you can see, we offer these in climate-controlled shelters to meet ambient climate and temperature considerations. We offer, on the other side, you see just an indoors application mounted on some racks. Here we're going to talk a little bit about reagents. So all these devices for AccuSeries require in some form, either 1 or 2 or 3 or more various chemical reagents. So option A is with every purchase, we offer the recipe, so you can make them up in your lab. Option B, you can use these recipes and source them locally from a local reagent vendor. Or option C, you can also purchase from us. So here we're talking about some, the standard preventive maintenance or scheduled maintenance. So weekly, they're typically set up for an automatic analyzer calibration. So you want to make sure that you have fresh standard available at the analyzer prior to this happening. Monthly, we can do sensor calibration. And what we mean by that would be either the pH probes, if it's a titrator, or an ISE probe. We want to make sure that those are within calibration by putting a standard underneath them. We also want to check the pump flow rate calibration, make sure that the pumps are delivering the reagents amounts correctly, not too much or not too little. Quarterly maintenance, we offer maintenance kits, and that would typically be the peristaltic tubing for the pumps. We replace that and also replace the piston pump seals, and also some of the associated O-rings and gaskets on the sample reaction cell cup. Annually, we like to have the potentiometric sensors replaced or as needed. And every 2 years for the colorimetric analyzers, we would have you replace the source lamp and the optical filters on the detectors. So we offer, obviously, service and support, either local on-site or FATs at our factory. So why AccuSeries? Well, we offer this hazardous area certified Div 2 or Zone 2 without purge. So there is no plumbing necessary for instrument air, and there's no purge to go bad. It just simply meets this without any purge. Multi-parameter, again, up to 3 compounds in one sample or one analyzer, one cell, so it eliminates the need for multiple analyzers. Material of construction, we offer very custom designed analyzers to meet the chemical compatibility of your sample stream. So they're not, typical off-the-shelf design. So we work with you and make a turnkey system that will be compatible for their sample. Here we look at a couple of what-if scenarios. Well, if there was a filter breakthrough further up the line prior to the analyzer and some solids came, well, we already know that we have quarter-inch tubing, so it handles high amounts of solids in relatively large particle size without plugging up, as opposed to using tiny spaghetti tubing, or like to call it the 1/8 inch tiny tubing that'll plug up quite easily. If it needs to be reconfigured, like we talked about a couple slides back, we can simply unplug a board and plug in a different module for, say, if we were going to go from ISE to colorimetric or colorimetric to ISE, or if we want to add some outputs, it's easily done, as opposed to having to purchase a whole different analyzer. And we provide the reagent formulations. We do not hold you to purchase reagents from us. Here we're looking at some of the upgrade benefits. So if you were a customer that had an old FPA or Titronic Sentinel, obviously the design now has changed. Our temperature limitations are much better. The old FPA and Sentinel would only work really well ambient temperatures between 5 and 45 degrees C. AccuSeries now is rated to -20 to 60 degrees C. And we can meet hazardous area without a purge, as opposed to the Sentinel FPA, which would require a purge on them. The old analyzers were single parameter. We now offer multi-parameter. To reconfigure the older devices, it was quite complicated and a lot of parts and pieces, and it was almost easier to just purchase a new analyzer as opposed to the AccuSeries, where we can just, really plug and play different modules and change the programming, and we're up and running to what's required. Communications was only 4 to 20 on the older devices. We still have 4 to 20, but we also now offer the Modbus, Ethernet, and Ethernet GUI. So for remote access to the device. Not one size fits all. Here's just some example configurations for different H2S samples that would measure hydrogen sulfide. So we offer colorimetric for this. We also offer ion selective or titration, and we would use this depending on, obviously, range. It's the most important, but also what kind of interferences would be present. So there is some ions that could be present that would interfere with our ion selective measurement. So at that point, we could either, depending on range, choose to do this with colorimetric or titration. Analysis time, if this is important and it meets the criteria where we could use ion selective, obviously you can see it's quicker, or titration. And if we can do them as opposed to colorimetric, we would offer this if that's important. Performance, colorimetric or titration obviously gives you your best repeatability and performance compared to ion selective electrode, as that's 5% of full scale compared to 2% with colorimetric, or depending on the titration, 2% to 5% on that. Different replacements for colorimetric, obviously we want to replace the optical filters and lamps every 2 years, but ion selective electrode is annual ISE probe replacement, or titration yearly pH probe replacement. If it's multi-parameter, it's possible on an ISE in titration, but generally not possible on colorimetric, that it would actually use the same filter for the measurement. With AccuSeries, we offer measurement certainty, rapid return on the investment. So we quickly, obviously, identify expensive process upsets. We avoid human and chemical interaction from doing manual samples. We reduce the cost with precise control, and we optimize for the environmental compliance. And we've done 40 years of very difficult applications. Any questions? Through our sales channels, our regional sales managers, or your local representative, or you can contact myself as a platform manager and help you out.